We all struggle with the highs and lows of life. It's natural to experience a depressive episode when things get tough. However, research shows that men have a far more difficult time talking about how they feel. In research done by Priority Group, a study found that 77% of men have struggled with a common mental health condition, such as stress, anxiety and depression. However, the research also showed that 40% of those men have never spoken to anybody about their struggles. In recent years, men have begun to turn to physical exercise to treat their mental health as opposed to traditional therapies. I want to find out why this is and why men are making the change. I'm starting my journey across the River Mersey, meeting up with men's mental health expert Chris Shaw at the Paul Lavelle Foundation in Birkenhead to learn more about men's struggles. So in your opinion, what is the kind of current state of men's mental health?
I think probably we are viewing the world differently in terms of male and masculine roles than we've probably done throughout the whole of human history. So I think the current state of men's mental health is probably in as parlous a state as it's been certainly in the last 100 or so years, because I think these days we're much more able to recognise distress and trauma, and we have tried to look at treating trauma and distress and sadness through a very pathological lens, where we're now attributing a lot more to kind of illness than probably our species has ever had the opportunity to do before.
Why do you think these stats are kind of so heavily weighted towards kind of men? The suicide rates are a lot more in men, and that kind of, why do you think it is weighted that way?
That things like suicide rates and rates of depression, there's a multiplicity of reasons for that, and that can be right the way from how we don't process trauma in some respects, and I think all the time that there is an incredible pressure across the population, let alone with just with males, but I know that younger males in particular are a major focus because obviously, as you'll know, the mortality and the deaths in particularly in younger males, that suicide is the biggest killer of young males, isn't it?
Over the past kind of maybe half a decade to a decade, we've seen more and more kind of foundations for men's mental health kind of pop up across the country, and these sessions, whether it be kind of cold water dips and swims, football, kind of woodwork, why do you think that these sessions are having such a big impact on men? What do you think it's doing for them and offering them that other stuff just isn't?
When males are doing stuff in common purpose with other males in team sports, then that tends to be a very good way of there's a major therapeutic benefit to being involved in a strong team purposeful activity. And I think then that then ties in with lots of our kind of chemical and neurological responses to stress and the environment that we're in. So even though things like cold water swimming and hill running and all these wonderful things that this organisation does a lot of as well, that it's tapping in to our innate and ancient ways of having a brain chemistry that's appropriate to the environment that we're in.
Chris left me with a lot to think about. Was the answer to men's struggles deep-rooted within us all along? I needed to learn more, so I started by running a survey which threw up some interesting stats. When asked if they'd suffered with any form of mental health issues, 66.1% of men polled said yes. I also asked if they joined a sports team, had they seen a positive effect on their mental health? An overwhelming 85.5% said it had. I followed up with why had it, and what I saw made it clear Chris was right. The stats were clear, but I wanted to find out more from people actively putting this method into their everyday lives. I started by catching up with my friend Tim, who fell back in love with running after losing his best friend to suicide. He's been regularly attending parkrun to help him through his grief and challenging emotions. Tim, you've been coming to parkrun for years now. What is it about running that helps you with your mental health? What is it that kind of makes you feel kind of better about yourself?
Well, I mean, to start with, it's got to be like the community, like today there was a good 400, 500 people come out, all wanting you to do your best, uplift everybody, just the positive vibes that it brings. And, I came into it after my mate passed away about a year ago, and it really helped me in a tough situation, just the running, the clarity it gives you, sets your mind free a bit, and yeah, honestly, it's in some way saved me really.
Next I met up with Dan from Inniskill in Northern Ireland, who by day is a quantity surveying student in Liverpool. However, he has another life as a professional triathlete. I wanted to learn how Dan used sport not only to keep his mind right, but also how it affected those around him.
Well, there was a time where I was in a kind of a state where I was changing what career path I was going to go down, and I got into a really bad mental state, and I didn't eat for 5 days, and I was admitted on anxiety medications and stuff like that, and I didn't know what to do to myself, and I eventually just said, right, I'm going to go for a run. And as soon as I went for a run, just my mind was completely empty, and that was like the reset button that I needed to get back to the proper mental state that I should have been at. I find training and doing endurance stuff, it really expands your grit and determination. So I'm able to do things now that I thought I'd never be able to do. And that kind of goes with work as well. Whenever I'm having a tough time or I'm doing a tough assignment, I know that I have the mental grit to be able to get through it from training. Training definitely can be life-changing, really. I've seen some people in really bad mental states or, with alcohol or drug problems, taking up a sport, and they just turn into a completely different person. They look like a new person, and they're just happy, really. I would even say that being active is way better than medications. Medications can become addictive, and they can also have negative side effects, where if you do something simple, even if it's a short walk through a park, or like you said, like a game of football, that's a free therapy really, and it can change your life if you're doing it as a daily routine.
As I left Dan, I thought about how he and Tim had taken control of their mental health to get through a tough time. Not everybody has the same mental fortitude to pick themselves up when things get really tough. A lot of people need a helping hand. I wanted to explore how foundations could help people get active. One sport has risen above all the others, with over 100 clubs now using foundations to connect with people in their area. That sport is football. So I came down to the Walsall FC Foundation to speak to Chris Springthorpe about his Beat the Block session.
Sessions like this are saving men's lives. You might not always see it, they might not always tell you, but they are. We've had people that come and tell me, oh, thank you, you've helped me so much, we've done this. And it can be in, like, oh, you've helped me get back into a point where I can work. But then we've also had guys that we've documented as part of our reports that have been at that situation where they've wanted to take their own life, and they've been in those crisis situations, and actually having sessions like this to come to has given them that feel of wanting and purpose and something that they look forward to each week.
Previous situations I've been in, like in 2020, I tried to hang myself and I felt alone. I come to football. Obviously I know Chris through previous football, but he said come along. I met the lads, really helped me, and I think that benefits me for exercise, keeping fit, and also there's a real togetherness with the players here.
I think from the feedback that we've had, it's that people don't like going and seeing doctors. They don't like to see that professional to tell them all the time that this is what they need to do and this is what they need to have. And like I said, sometimes they've got loads. I don't want medication. I want to find my own way. And I think particularly football in general. Obviously, we are a football club and the foundation. Guys love football, don't we? We love football, and to have a way of doing something that can improve your mental well-being and keep it at a level where you're happy, what better way than playing and being involved in the sport that we all love.
During this documentary, I wanted to find out why men were taking up exercise to improve their mental health. To this day, the issues men face when talking about their mental health still exist. As men, we often don't feel comfortable opening up about our struggles. However, we now have a better understanding of our own mental health, and I think that's crucial. Chris Shaw made it clear exercise is necessary for men on a primitive level. Throughout my journey, I saw men taking matters into their own hands, understanding that sometimes they need to get active. As Chris Springthorpe said, this is saving men's lives.